Welcome to the swamp, where I found another muck-filled game at the bottom of the pond, also known as Steam. This game is circulated around for a short time when it first came into early access, but from its lawsuit to recently with its 1.0 update, has it improved since then? Let's find out. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games, based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. I only played a small amount of this game in the early access. After that, I didn't really touch it again until recently with its 1.0 launch. From there, I played several hours on the single player map and several hours on the multiplayer PvP servers. Myth of Empires is a game where you play as a Chinese warrior back in the feudal times and rise up from a washed-up peasant to a lord with an army at your back. You can raise forces, siege towers, both computer-generated and player-made. The game itself seems to also be similar to Conan Exiles, with some chivalry-style gameplay mixed in as well as the survival mechanics. I would recommend an above-average computer to play this game, though it can be better to have a stronger rig, as there is a lot of foliage and placeables that don't really work often. The character creation is going to be the best part that this game has to offer. With so many options and sliders, you have free reign to make almost any kind of character you want, from thin to muscled, even fat. The faces all do look a bit iffy, but you can still choose many types of hairstyles, as well as tattoos to adorn yourself with in various areas of your body. So I'm gonna rate this section a 5 out of 5. It's very in-depth with what you can do. Once you make your character, and after you choose which map to play on, you are thrown into the world. Go. No tutorial, nor anything. While the gameplay itself is relatively the same, punching trees, eating food for the hunger bar, building up your home, the menu system is a complete mess. I think I spent the first hour of my gameplay trying to figure out the talent point system. I'll talk about that more later. But from there, depending on where you spawn can make all the difference. On the older map, where I had hardly any resources, it would take fucking forever just to walk anywhere. Meanwhile, on the newer map, I found an abundance of resources near the spawning area, including copper, which I'll talk about more later. Either way, it's a slog to get through the first hour or so I'm gonna rate this a 3 out of 5. The exploration is very dry in this game. I feel the primary reason is due to the limited view distance. While there are areas such as camps and mines, hunting grounds, and small NPC villages, they are far and few between, which makes it absolutely long to walk anywhere and see anything of value. Writing, of course, is beneficial, but not always an option at the start of the game. And when your destination doesn't even load in until you are close, it could feel like you are running for an eternity and seeing nothing but trees, if the trees even spawn at all. One thing I do like is that the creatures are dynamically spawned, which is always a plus in my book, but you also have areas where certain creatures will always spawn or just spawn more often, in various hunting grounds for those who need a particular animal slain and can't find any in the wilds. There are several biomes in the maps that you can visit, from grasslands to mountains, forests, deserts, swamps, and snowy areas, each with leveled ranged enemies, as well as unique beasts such as crocodiles, rhinos, elephants. The newer map having newer creatures that the older map doesn't is also a benefit, such as crabs, otters, beavers, and much more. I feel the new map has much more variety. It was built a bit better, as well as easier to gather materials. For example, copper ore is the first metal you're going to need in order to progress into the Bronze Age. On the old map, you can only find copper at mines, which are all crawling with tons of enemies. If there are single nodes outside of these locations, I have not found any. Meanwhile, on the newer map, you can find copper ore scattered all around the forest without a ton of enemies near them, so it's much easier to progress at lower levels. All in all, I think I'm going to rate this section a 2.5 out of 5. There are very good things about this map and the layout, but overall it is hurt by itself with the limited view distance of the items that can spawn in, not to mention the pop-in of those items when you are very close to them, and there is a lack of points of interest to discover. So I had two very different experiences playing. I had the solo mode on the older map and the multiplayer PvP on the newer map. Playing defaulted solo player means, for an example, you don't drop items on death and you don't have item durability, but those things do exist on the multiplayer default settings. With the food system, it was more manageable in solo player as I only had to eat every so often, but I still had to find and cook food. On multiplayer, I felt like the settings were just way too high. I could go AFK to take a piss, come back, and I'd be dead from starvation. Something that I found annoying was that when you die, it doesn't default your respawn to your bed or bedroll, and there were times that I hit respawn and it just threw me back to the beach, so I would have to run all the way back, and that was kind of annoying. So earlier I mentioned how I spent my first hour of gameplay trying to figure out this skill and talent system. It is the most convoluted and complex thing I have ever seen in a survival game. You have, of course, normal recipes to learn in various categories, and you have your normal player progression stats. Though the layout of it with tabs within tabs and how it just expands out with all these different areas to put points in and different points to specialize your character, it just makes this way too complex, especially when there's no tutorial or a way to ease you into it. I feel like the survival of this game is bland at best and annoying at worst, so I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. The building of this game can be expansive and allow for creative builds, as seen in these screenshots here. While I never got that far in my building, looking through the various crafting unlocks you can see, there is the potential for massive castles and villages, from walled off domains for your followers to farms and all in between. Just like in Conan Exiles, you can get followers to help you and be around your base. You can make farms to grow various crops to feed your army, as well as your animals that you can tame and farm, from foxes and rabbits to horses in your stables. Taming horses isn't that difficult either. While it does require you to prep and make several items beforehand, again none of which is taught to you in game, the process of taming itself is relatively easy. First you have to throw a bit of hay so the horse has its attention away from you. As you sneak up on it, you can mount up with a crude riding crop and allow the horse to try to buck you off. He will ride for a time just like normal, and then he'll get angry, which then a short action key moment will proc. If you succeed, the cycle will repeat. Though by then a low-level horse will be tamed shortly after, so it's not that big of a deal. Now that you have a horse, you could put a saddle on it and even armor. Horses do help you travel in this game a lot, better than just walking. Human followers you can get by knocking them out and torturing them, similar to Conan Exiles, or you can bribe them, which is a more peaceful way to gain followers at lower levels. If you find friendly NPCs and talk to them, they will say that anyone who feeds them can be their lord. They'll then ask for food or armor, because you know they will eat the armor. They are asking for food after all, and then they ask for armor. If you give them what they ask for, they'll join your party. I will say that I do like the party system where you can order them to get into different combat positions and formations, have them focus melee or ranged attacks and defenses. You can even order them to march in front of you and be your shield. If you are downed by an enemy, they can help pick you back up. That's really the only positive thing I have about this system because their combat is still clunky and shit. The crafting system is still relatively the same as games like Conan Exiles, where you have different workbenches for various items. Sometimes you have to craft items in different workbenches in order to make the upgraded item and specialty benches, which I don't really like that system in any game. It works in Conan for the most part because it's mostly automatic and you can just leave it be, and any byproducts can be used, especially for the higher end items. Also, with the combination of thralls, it just makes it a lot easier and it works fine. The reason why it doesn't work in this game, Myth of Empires, even though it is similar, is because not only is it unneeded busy work that makes you craft an item to make an item to make an item, but also the high amount of grinding needed. This game, just like other games, is tuned for multiplayer, so on a multiplayer server, it's fine because you have multiple players to farm up all the needed supplies. but it does not change for single player mode. What's worse, among all the various server settings that you can change, there is no gather rate setting to adjust for solo players or just for unofficial servers in general. This section is going to be a 3 out of 5. While the building can be expanse, crafting is a chore, and one of the reasons this game will feel like a hurdle to play. But there is something that is even worse. That's right, the fucking PvE. This is the worst part of this terrible game hands down. From the clunk and sometimes unresponsive actions of just fighting in general, to the inaccurate targeting, which causes you to miss most of the time even if the reticle was on the enemy. If your weapon goes through them as well, it would still count as a miss. Once you know the proper positioning to make accurate strikes, it is a bit more bearable, but figuring it out while you're being slapped around by a herd of foxes is a terrible way to learn. Oh yeah, you heard me right, by the way. So if you attack something, chances are that NPC will call for friends to help them. It makes sense, but in this case, hordes of boars and foxes, let alone human NPCs, if you strike one of them, all of their friends in the nearby area will come running and gang rape you, regardless of your level. You have to be in metal armor and a high level to even survive. If you are not, it doesn't matter, you are already dead. Firing a bow in this game is terrible, as there is a high chance that your arrow could just skew off randomly. It happens often enough to get annoying. One-handed swords suck in my opinion. The spears and two-handed weapons seem to be the only effective methods of fighting. I did unlock crossbows, but I didn't try them out. Either way, the PvE section is going to be getting a 1 out of 5. Don't play this game for the PvE, you will uninstall from the frustration. This game is primarily a multiplayer PvP game. That is where I would say that the game excels the most, though it's not a high bar as of right now. Now you have two hurdles to face off first, finding an English-speaking server amongst the hundreds of Chinese ones, and finding a clan to join. If you manage to find a clan to join, you will have an okay time of playing it. But just like any other online full PvP game like Ark or Conan, you will have the exact same issues, such as being offline rated like I was, or you can have gangs of roving gankers who will troll the low-level areas and wipe out newer players who can't defend themselves, and so on. But in the event that you are in a clan, you can have large sieges of enemy bases, walls for protection, machines of war, armored horses, and charging in with an army of both players and NPCs. It can be a fun time with decent roleplay as well. So with that, I'm going to rate this section a 3.5 out of 5. It's the better element of this game, and it's primarily what it's built for, though you still have the typical issues of any other PvP game. There is no story to unfold in this game, there's no quest lines, nor cutscenes, so this section is going to be skipped. While modding does exist through Steam Workshop, there is only 19 mods. Most of them are written in Chinese, and from there, the few English ones, they're not really anything to write home about. So this section is going to get a 1 out of 5 for lackluster mods. When this game originally came out, it was met with the same overall thoughts that the game has potential but lacking in a lot of spaces. Only time would tell if the updates would help pull it through. Those thoughts, however, were shattered when this game company was sued by the producers of Ark Survival Evolved for stolen coding or something like that. Because of this, the game was no longer able to be purchased on Steam. News on updates went dark for the few who could still play it because they bought it before it was removed from the store. The only posts that you would see would be those on regular maintenance. Many lost hope. Eventually, after a few years or so, the lawsuit I think was either settled or dismissed. Either way, the game was announced that it would be back on the Steam store and launch into its 1.0 update with a new map. While it was an amazing bounce-back story, the content updates are lackluster. I understand that the lawsuit drained resources and money from them, but to go right into a launch state with minimal changes to the overall gameplay and only a few minor systems and a new map to show for it, it wasn't worth it, and right now we have no future roadmaps for this game. Because of that, this section is going to be a 2 out of 5. Maybe in the future they will focus more on fixing the issues rather than overhauling systems now that they don't have the lawsuit tying their hands, but it has remained to be seen as of right now. I really don't know what more I can say on this section, as I've explained many of the issues that this game is plagued with already in other sections. But beyond that, I would say that the lag is moderate, not enough to really rage about, but enough to notice, including on my solo server, but of course more so on the multiplayer servers. Even with a low ping, I rubber banded several times and had seen many placeable items like the trees and rocks just blink in and out, or just stay invisible for long periods of time before popping in, and so on. I've already covered all of this in other sections. But anyway, this is gonna get a 1 out of 5. My overall score for Myth of Empires 1.0 launch is going to be a 2.4 out of 5, a scuffed wannabe version of Conan Exiles with more bugs than Ark Survival Evolved, in its early access. While there are good things about this game, such as the decent character customization, I like the follower order system, as well as the building and large-scale PvP potential, but alone they are not enough to save the rest of this game from the terrible performance, the pop-in, the borked PvE, and many more issues that this game has that is just running it down into the dirt in terms of the rating. I will say either wait for a sale if you want to try this game, or wait a year or two and see how much it's progressed since then. I did like the 3rd century Chinese theme, and it's not something that we see often. I would have loved to see this game fully realized, but sadly I think that won't be the case. But anyway, that's it for my review. I've already started playing Nightingale and will be bringing out my review very soon, followed by my 1.0 launch review of Sons of the Forest and Smallland, as well as many more games that have launched into the early access or into their 1.0 launch. Until then, I'll see you next time. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel, as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.